Hi there. Today we're going to work through our egg clouds recipe. We're going to be covering several different essential skills, separating egg whites and egg yolks. We're going to learn how to whip egg whites, make them fluffy manually by hand. We'll also work on plating and meal appeal with our skills today, and even our concept of mise en place. So let's begin by looking down at the things we have taken out already. Mise en place means everything in its place. So as we go through our recipe, we need 2 eggs at room temperature. I've got those out and ready for us. I also even grabbed an extra in case an accident happened and we broke our egg yolk into our egg white. We could start over again and continue forward after that. We want to mise en place out our cream of tartar, and we remember that the cream of tartar's job in this recipe is to stabilize the protein wall as we denature that protein and whip those egg whites, and keep the waters on one side, the air on the other, and hold the waters in from leaking out onto the bottom of our pan. We need our 2 pinches of salt and a 1/4 cup of, I chose today, grated Parmesan cheese. I like how salty it is. It also reminds us to work carefully with the fatty items, right? We're gonna be working really hard today. The next step in our mise en place is we wanna make sure our oven is preheated to 450 degrees. And in this recipe, team, we wanna use a conventional oven versus a convectional oven. We want the air to be still. If we have it convecting, the air moving around our egg white is gonna over brown it, over caramelize it, and not quite get the plating look that we're looking for. So we're set up there. Our next direction tells us to set up a sheet pan with parchment paper, and I'm gonna just take a little bit of an extra step today and just dust down a little bit of cornstarch in order to help release this product when we're taking it off the pan later. So I'm just going to use this sifter here and just dust a little bit of cornstarch down to help with nonstick. That's all. Doesn't affect flavor or anything like that, so you don't have to worry about that. We've prepared that, and you want to make sure you get this pan ready before you begin the mise en place part. You don't need your whipped egg whites in the bowl deflating while you're prepping this. It affects the quality of your product, so this is an important pre-preparation step. After that, we get to continue forward and separate our egg whites. So this essential skill, we are just going to put our egg whites in our largest mixing bowl, and then I have prepared for us 2 small little side ramekins to put our egg yolks in. These will hold them until it's time to place them back into the egg clouds for the final baking process. At home, you can go ahead and use small little teacups, spray maybe a little bit of cooking oil in there to keep your egg yolk intact as you're pouring it out. Your goal is to have intact yolks. If they break though, that's gonna be okay. They'll still just gonna work just fine. Maybe that customer, or you want your egg cooked a little firmer. Breaking that egg yolk is gonna help do that. So we're gonna go ahead and just use our flat surface to separate our egg whites from our yolks. And I just give it a double tap usually until I feel it start to break. And right here, we got it broken, and I'm just gonna place my thumbs right here, and I use them for pressure. And as soon as I start to crack it open, I turn it upright. So I can go this way or this way, it doesn't really matter. We're just gonna catch the yolk now. And we're gonna be careful, whoops, that's all right, not to break that yolk, right? We don't wanna use the sharp edges on this to accidentally break it. So just go ahead and shake it out, and then just gently place it into your side cup. Sometimes you might accidentally break it in there, no big deal, okay? So we move forward. We got no fats in here, no broken egg yolk. Any fats in here is gonna impede our ability to whip these egg whites and get them fluffy. So now that it's cracked, I'm just putting it upright. I'm gonna choose to go this direction, I think. And just go ahead and let it fall right out. Good one. Also, team, these eggs are at room temperature because our eggs are gonna fluff up better, okay? So from here, I'm just gonna practice a little safety and sanitation. We're gonna throw away our shells, and I'm gonna wash my hands. We've reset with clean hands, and we can move forward in our mise en place. We've prepared our wire whip and our 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar. So go ahead and add that into our recipe. And I just want to point out that this wire whip has a nice thin gauge. And if you listen, you can kind of hear it's got some nice spring to it. So any of those wire whips that have a really thick gauge and don't spring very well are going to be a little bit harder to work with. So make sure you select one with a thinner gauge, and we're just going to begin whipping these egg whites. But let's remember our body ergonomics here, because this is not going to work out. We're going to be exhausted. It's not going to be any fun. The point in the kitchen is to have fun and relax, right? So we're just going to relax. We're going to just drop our elbow right to our ribs, and we're just going to take our wire whip before we even touch the pan. And I just want you to turn your hand into a circle, just like this. See, I'm holding it. You can turn it like this, but all I want you to do is go in a circle, and that's really all the more energy we have to really go. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to start. And you'll notice I'm throwing the egg around. I'm not stirring. This is stirring, and this isn't going to get the job done, okay? This is whipping it around. It's denaturing those curly little proteins, straightening them out so that it can hold air on one side and water on the other. That's how we're whipping these egg whites. Our cream of tartar is now nice and evenly distributed through. Our bubbles are getting smaller and smaller, and as they get smaller and smaller, they'll reflect more light. It'll get whiter and whiter, all right? Our cream of tartar does such a good job of stabilizing that we can get those fine, fine, fine air bubbles. So we just move on. If you get tired, no big deal. You can even pop your arm out as long as you're really using very little arm movement, all right? You really don't need to get yourself exhausted over this. And because all you're doing really is moving your hand back and forth in a tiny little oval, you can even switch hands, right? So if you get tired, you can even switch hands, no big deal. So in order to just whip up a few egg whites, you don't want to have to break out the mixer. You just want to quick get the job done, all right? And make sure all the egg whites are part of the party. Get them in the bowl, right? We can see the colors getting lighter. The air bubbles are even finer now. And we're going to take this all the way to in between that medium and firm peak, so that when I pick this whisk up, all of it will stick right on top. All right? So after 30 seconds, we've already moved ourselves to soft peaks, right? It sticks all the way to the whip, but it droops down. So that's a soft peak. If you're wondering when you're looking at recipes and they're telling you what it should be like, soft peaks, droopy. So what happens if I just hit it really hard again for another 25, 30 seconds? So 25 more seconds, we've moved ourselves to medium peak. It sticks out way further, it's firmer. What if I get a nice little blob, get it to the top? It holds tight, right? When I hold it straight up, it doesn't fall. So we are probably about 15 seconds away from where we need to go. All right, you can see how nice and tight the bubbles are, how glossy and white it is. In our bonus recipe, if we were making the pavlova, we'd be adding our sugar here. We are there. Show an example. We pick it up, and the peak stands straight up. We've reached firm peak. All right? So you have visual cues. Soft peak, droopy, runny. Medium peak, sticks out nice but falls. Firm peak, it's firm. You can move it around and it stays put. Okay? So now, we just worked really hard. And our lessons taught us that fats, like egg yolks, make it so this doesn't work out. And we're about to dump fatty cheese into this. So we have to take care. Our next essential skill involves folding. Folding is not stirring. Folding is a divide in half and flop activity, okay? So I'm just gonna carefully move with my rubber scraper spatula all my product into a spot. I'm gonna take my pre-measured grated Parmesan cheese. This is a fresh grate, by the way, and I'm gonna set it on the side. I'm not gonna dump it directly on top of all my hard work. If I do that, it'll start to immediately deflate those bubbles with the fats. So we're just gonna be so careful and so gentle. And all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take it and I'm gonna divide it in half, and I'm gonna throw it. And I'm just gonna turn it 90 degrees, and I'm gonna divide it in half and toss it. Look, I just picked up a decent amount on top there, and I'm just careful. And I'm only gonna do this a few times until there's like just a little bit all mixed through. I don't need it to be a perfect, fold until well combined, right? This is still gonna fluff and carry the cheeses through. So right now, I got it mixed through very, very lightly. I can still see egg white there, but plenty of cheese here and there. We stop touching it, stop poking it, don't stir it, leave it alone, okay? This is where we move directly to our prepared sheet pan. This is why it needs to be ready. And we're just gonna take our rubber scraper spatula, and we're gonna make 2 piles, so 1 pile for each egg, right? If you're trying to do your portions and expand this recipe out. Make my other little pile here. I'm trying to work efficiently, but still get every piece of product out of this. This doesn't belong down the drain or in the landfill. This belongs in people's bellies. So we use all of it. Next step, we just take a nice spoon, and we're gonna make a little dent here. This is gonna be the little nest, the little divot in the cloud to hold the yolk later. So I'm just gonna go ahead and work this down and make a little divot. And this is gonna puff when it cooks. So don't, it helps if you get a little low here, if you can see. So make sure that you make your little divot, but don't show your parchment on the bottom. But it's all gonna puff, so make sure you make a nice wall so that you can hold your yolk later. We're gonna pop that right into the oven for 3 minutes. And start our timer. And team, this is where you can clean up, and this is where you and I are gonna talk a little bit about mass production. Because this is a recipe, we just made portions for 2, but we could be making portions for 25. We could do a brunch, we could do a baby shower, we could do Mother's Day or Father's Day events where you can lay all this out, pop it in the large oven, and then bring it out and be able to serve this in mass style production, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and take these items and get them into my dish room. So you can see I really, with my mise en place done, I have minimal mess here also. So other good benefits and reasons to work through smart recipes is, can you produce this in a kitchen with the equipment you have, with the staff that you have, and with the space that you have? This can all be done with just a few things. This is a reasonable recipe to work through in your restaurant. As well, it's very likely you're going to have Parmesan on your menu. Eggs are in your restaurant. Salt already exists here. Cream of tartar is affordable. So all these things are things we have, and we're not creating brand new orders for brand new menu items when we think about that mass production type settings. I'm going to drop this off, and I'm going to meet you over at the toaster. All right, our egg clouds are working through their first 3 minutes in the oven, and while that's happening, we are going to multitask, mise en place, make sure everything is in its place. And with that, that means we'll begin our toast for our recipe. So what you're seeing here is a reduced size conveyor belt oven. And inside of it, there's literally a conveyor belt moving our toast along through the recipe. So this is awesome because a chef can get many, many, many pieces of toast going. It'll just keep coming out the bottom, and then they can keep working on toasting things. Also, you'll see these things available for guests to use on their own at hospitals and hotels. And this can be made in a version that's 10 times larger that we put pizzas on. So these conveyor ovens are really good to think about when we're learning about our equipment. We are working with one right here. We're prepping the toast for plating. We're going to plate our egg clouds on some toast. We're going to make sure we garnish it with some parsley and some cayenne pepper that will bring a pop of color. If we think about what we're about to plate, an egg and toast, those are very beige and yellow things. So for meal appeal reasons, we want to bring alternate colors like the green of the parsley, like the color of the cayenne pepper. Remember that all of our garnishes should be edible. So how fun is it that we can even infuse some additional heat and flavor with our garnish with that cayenne pepper. So that's pretty awesome. You see our toast moving through. It looks like it needs a little speed up. I've mise en placed out our butter, a plate, our scraper spatula for when the eggs come out. Butter these, you'll notice I put on gloves because this is ready to eat food. My hands don't belong on it anymore, okay? One of the easiest ways to spread foodborne illnesses through our kitchens is with our bare hand contact of things, okay? So we remember that we use clean gloved hands whenever we're going to touch people's ready to eat food. All right, we got our toast prepped out. I personally like to cut this toast in half before I plate it. I'm going on the diagonal. We remember with meal appeal, we want multiple shapes. So I think I'm going to make a little bit of a frame right here. And then we can walk over here. I believe we're just a few seconds away from rotating our items. So I'll just meet you over here at the oven. So just a few minutes ago, I stepped up and I added our egg yolks here. And there's some visual cues that kind of help, right? They are going to be runny. That is the plan. But I want a little bit more of a firmer crust on that. So we're going to return those in and just let those cook a little bit longer. And team, we want them, the yolks, to be a little underdone on the inside. They're going to be a sauce with this recipe. We worked hard to whip up our egg whites, season them beautifully with our Parmesan cheese, but they're going to be a little drier, right? And our toast is a little bit drier. We buttered it. So that yolk is providing delicious flavor and a delicious sauce, which sauces provide moisture. So we want to make sure that we don't cook those hard all the way through. That's not the intention. We just kind of want to cook them a little bit of a skin on top. And for immediate service, that is acceptable. That's food safe, okay? Here we go. Now for our guests that say maybe like theirs just a little bit firmer, we can do something like break the egg yolk. So I could take like a utensil, like my measuring spoon, and I could break this egg yolk up. and then return it to the oven, and it would force it to cook firmer for my guest. Otherwise, this one's starting to grow a nice little like firmer crust skin on the outside, and I'm happy with that. I'm gonna send it out as a sauce for my guests, okay? So we're gonna head on over to our toaster, and this is an immediate thing, right? We've mise en place everything. So we remove our egg clouds from the oven. We return to our plating station where we've mise en place everything out, and I can, with my my turner spatula, these come right up and off of our parchment paper that we put the cornstarch down on very nicely. We're just going to slide it on up and add it to the plate. You might just plate one piece of toast, right, with this. You might choose to plate one piece of toast. Let's bring the garnish over and look at this. So for plating, right, this is a very large plate. This might be something you sell as like the hungry man plate. Otherwise, we could alternatively, we could choose to plate it a little bit differently. We could send it out with hash browns and fruit, right? So I could take this whole side and put it on a whole different plate and send this out with a side of hash browns and say a cup of fruit. So if we were to picture in our meal appeal like different pops of color on our plate, you can even see what happens when I add this garnish as examples to how it changes things and how gorgeous and beautiful this plate looks even by adding that pop of color. So if we compare over here, this looks a little bit boring. As soon as we think of meal appeal, get alternate shapes in here, frame things, and put a little extra color on the plate, that changes everything. All right? So that's the topics that we want to talk about today. We learned how to separate egg whites from the yolks. We learned how to whip egg whites by hand. We learned how to work through our mise en place and our pre-preparation. We learned how to gently, carefully fold, as well as just our meal appeal and our plating, and making sure that we're using nice garnishes to really bring great color and flavor to our dishes. Thank you.